questions. And we're starting with MP Kelly for the first 6 minutes.
Well, thank you. I'll start with Mr. Luberts about with Now Housing. So, how will the increase of the inclusion rate affect investment with your business and the products that you wish to produce?
Well, one of the things we're trying to do is build a new factory and to find investors to come into an agreement with us with some of the tax rates that are tax hikes that have been presented with the capital gains tax. We are finding it much harder to find investors, even local investors, to invest in some of the things we are trying to do, not just from a factory point of view, but also a project point of view. Some of the large construction projects we've worked with developers on have margins of profits of 3 to 5%. And when the capital gains tax is raised, even though it's only on the profit side, it brings their margins down and they end up shelving the projects.
Okay, so you described the shortage of housing in Canada and the housing crisis that this shortage creates. So we actually need investment in housing. We can't be chasing investment out of housing. So it's your testimony that this inclusion rate increase will decrease the investment in housing and therefore decrease or fail to increase the supply of housing. Is that what I hear from you?
That's basically part of it. Yes, that's correct.
What does that do? How does that affect employment? What will that do to the workers?
Well, so for instance, in our case, with trying to build a new factory and expand our operations, which would then create more jobs, has now been limited or is backed off, and we are unable to build because as an entrepreneur in this country and in the province of Ontario, we rely on a lot of the investors or private lenders to get behind us to be able to invest with us so that they can make their profits. And whether it's selling their stocks or like the actual investment in the property with the raise of the capital gains tax, this limits their margins when they're looking at their performance.
So in other words, a prospective investor, when having to choose between maybe something they're invested in currently and shifting capital, the triggers of this tax increase would make it that much harder for you to attract new investment to your enterprise.
Yeah, 100%. That's correct.
All right, thanks. I'd like to move to Monsieur Noël de la Chambre de Commerce du Québec. Can you talked about venture capital? Maybe take a little bit of. I'll give you a moment if you want to expand on how the increase in the inclusion rate will affect investment in new startups and new technology in Canada.
I'm going to let my colleague answer your question. Thank you very much, and thank you for your question. The impact is quite clear insofar as venture capital is a recycling of capital gains that have been realized through previous investments or previous entrepreneurial undertakings. For example, in the technology sector, those capital gains and the rise in the rate might have an effect of not encouraging the same level of investment in post-technology. And at the time of realizing that capital gains, it could constitute an obstacle, a blockage, in the terms of what these startup companies are actually doing in terms of investment, and it might lead to a splitting up of their resources that could have been used for diversification in technological sectors and in their entrepreneurial ventures.
On the timing, Mr. Noël, you mentioned the curious timing of this tax announcement. It was telegraphed in a budget, but not to take effect until June. It's unusual in a budget to sort of give people that are able to a chance to beat an incoming tax. The only sort of reason to do that I could think of would be to create a temporary bump in the government's revenue. But we still don't even have enabling legislation on this. It was announced in the budget. There was a Ways and Means motion in June, and this strange timing of it coming into force. Can you comment on the timing of this proposal from the government?
Well, maybe I could answer, Philip, if that's okay with you, Philip. If it's been more than 20 years that the inclusion rate, capital gains inclusion rate, has not been changed in Canada. What was the logic for changing it now? Why would capital gains that have accumulated significantly for an entrepreneur, why would it suddenly have to be raised after 20 years? That's the first question we wondered about. And secondly, once in 1972, when capital gains was introduced in Canada, before that new tax was put in place, there were exemptions for the gains and for the intergenerational transfer of assets. This now seems unfair to us. With respect to timing as well, something else, the small and medium-sized businesses in Canada, over the course of the past year, there has been a rise in insolvability over the past 12 months, I say. And given the data that was given to us by the Bank of Canada, there are historically low numbers in comparison with the numbers of the past 25 years. So this timing is a problem for us. Why was the inclusion rate raised at that moment?